What's up, family, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to share with you an excerpt from my new book, Christ Held Up, What's Taking So Long, which is available on Amazon. I was going to say everywhere books are sold, but I think that'll happen later on. But it is available on Amazon in ebook and in paperback. And today I'm going to read an excerpt from it. But before we do, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that alert notification bell so that you can get notified. All right, so let me give you a little bit of insight into this book. I wrote this book a few years ago, and primarily because there were a lot of conversations that I wanted to entertain and wanted to have with other believers and pastors when I was still a believer that I could not have because of the common denominator of belief. Because we all believed my questions were somewhat, and my thoughts were considered offensive. Now, I still believe, or I still have an attachment that those ideas that I was wrestling with at the time are highly valuable. And I thought that perhaps, maybe, even though I don't believe any of this anymore, maybe just by introducing some of the conversations that I was having, that it might help some people. And so I actually wrote this book almost like an essay, in a way that doesn't necessarily betray me as an atheist, betray or portray. That's the best way to say it. It doesn't betray me as an atheist, nor does it portray me as an atheist. It portrays me as a person who was in good faith, asking some questions and presenting these same questions to other people. So it's interesting in that regard. In my humble opinion, I think it makes it make for good faith reading, so that the reader isn't immediately defensive, and the atheist doesn't pick it up and immediately says, "Oh, this is a bunch of bullshit." So it's written for everybody. So I do want to share a little bit from it, and I hope you're ready. Forgive me. This has been a very busy week, and so my voice is all over the place. So we'll run with it. But this is from a chapter in the book called "Held Up by Misunderstanding." It is the second chapter in the book, and I'm going to start quite a few paragraphs in because these chapters are somewhat long. I think, oh my goodness, I can't remember how many chapters are in my own book. But if you ever actually get into my Google Drive and see how many books I'm writing, you will understand. But there are not a lot of chapters in this book. I think it's like 6 or 7. But the chapters are somewhat long, but it's a paperback book, so it's not even very wide. It's not textbook material. It's literally for ebook, it's like 50 something pages, and for paperback, it's like 80 something pages. So not a very long read, but some of the chapters are somewhat extensive. So let's start here. This is held up by misunderstanding, and I'm starting a few paragraphs in. During the most recent presidential election, the prophetic was in high demand once again. Some of the most influential names in mainstream ministry came and declared the word of the Lord, and that word was Donald J. Trump would win his reelection. It didn't happen. Kenneth Copeland, John Hagee, Chris Valentin, Paula White, and a slew of others did slightly less than crown the man Messiah while declaring God's approval and God's hand in assuring Trump's victory. Perhaps the most bizarre episode in the entire ordeal was Paula White's invocation of African angels to concretize his win. The audacity. Not only do we all of a sudden have African angels, but they're supposed to skip over the needs of a global African community to ensure the victory of a white man, of a majority white nation, at the beck and call of a white woman with no rhythm. We know the outcome of the 2020 presidential election, and we can no longer afford ourselves the luxury of not recognizing these outright misunderstandings. What should be clear to us all by now is that several of the most vocal leaders in mainstream Christianity have critical misunderstandings of both the text and the God of the text. And if these are our teachers, or even the secret idols of our teachers, what is the likelihood that our own understanding has not been influenced by their misunderstandings? And shouldn't we begin to wonder just how much our misunderstanding has impacted our ability to properly see the Christ of the Gospels? Is it possible that Christ is not waiting, but is instead being held up by our misunderstanding? Perhaps because of our misunderstandings, we've gotten it all wrong. After more than 2,000 years of waiting, surely it is more than plausible that we may not have the best perspective on the matter. If we are objectively engaged in this discussion, and we should be, then we must come face to face with the reality of our compliance with ignorance. How else could so many be wrong so publicly so many times unless we are already inclined to believe their delusions? Could it be because we share similar delusions? I find it necessary to make this clear so as to not cast the blame for our misunderstandings at the feet of anyone else. In my estimation, it is much better for us to realize that the room for such errors to exist has been created by our own lack of responsibility and accountability to study to show ourselves approved. To be frank, we have been found guilty of receiving information without verification and not having the sincerity to clarify when further inspection was needed. Unlike many of my contemporaries, I find no comfort in resting on the understanding of others. If I am to know God, I must know that God for myself. If I am to know Christ, then I must know him for myself. And if I am to understand the things of God, I must understand them equally for myself. We have said the words, but we have neglected to bring meaning to them. Unlike Pat Robertson and Jack Van Impe, I am not sure that there is a second coming. I'm not entirely sure if we've wrestled well enough with the first coming. After 2,000 years of waiting, filled with missed appointment after missed appointment, perhaps it is time to admit that we may not have it right. Honestly, have we truly put forth the effort to get it right? Have we been trying to understand? Or have we found it easier to trust in centuries old reconstructions based on the unsettled motives of anonymous others? We have left too much room in our relationship with God for the unchecked opinions of unknowns, many of whom should probably be irrelevant to our perception of the faith. And perhaps it has robbed us of Christ while yet giving us a form of godliness that denies the very divine power thereof. A godliness that has been penetrated by every perversion imaginable and has perpetrated even worse against humanity. If there is anything that separates us from the coming of Christ, whether first, second, or last, it is our lack of understanding. It is not time, nor is it sin. It is undeniably our misunderstanding. Now, what is absolutely beautiful about this is that misunderstanding is something that we can fix. If the way we currently interpret the scripture is truly the problem, we can correct our course by doing what we should have been doing from the beginning. We must now study to show ourselves approved. Now, that was from the middle of that chapter all the way to the end. That's how that chapter ends. And then we move over to another chapter called Thinking Exegetically. Now, as I said in the onslaught, that's not a right word. As I said, not the right word. As I said in the onset of this book definitely I wrote from the posture of a person who had questions, not a person who did believe, not a person who didn't believe, but more so as a person who was supposed to believe, but had come to different conclusions than other people. And so I write it that way, in a way that, as I said earlier, doesn't betray me as an atheist, nor does it portray me as an atheist. And what I really hope that happens from this book is that it invokes new conversations among believers and non-believers, and hopefully bridge some of those conversations. And I actually go through a great deal of work to show, I don't think is any secret, to show the disingenuousness that we've actually approached Christianity with all the way through. Um, I talk about the difference between the Jewish Messiah and even a Hebraic Messiah, and this Christian Christ, and how these things are absolutely incongruent and absolutely, hmm, absolutely in disregard of Jewish culture, and more prevalently, from my perspective as a sociologist and a person with anthropological tendencies, Hebraic culture, which is something that has been lost in the shadow of Judaism and or Jewish culture rather. And we've seen, even while Jewish culture still sort of persists, and there are a lot of things to say about that, but we see Jewish culture kind of forced to exist in the shadow of Christian culture many times. Those are some things that I would like to kind of see undone, as a person who is vehemently against the harms that imperialism and colonialism has caused on this great planet of ours. I'm always on the side of wanting to be mindful of not silencing the voices of other cultures. And what I realized is that Christianity seems to have been doing this since it got here. But anyway, I hope that you all enjoyed that. That was a little excerpt from the book. If you haven't already, get you a copy. It's available on Amazon right now. Again, you can get it as an ebook or you can get it as a paper copy. I don't mean to brag, but I think it is an excellent book. People are already buying it, and that, man, that touches me in a very beautiful place. Y'all just have no idea, to just see people value your work. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And it definitely is work. But yeah, if you haven't got your copy yet, go to Amazon. My name is not hard to spell. And even if you get it wrong, 9 times out of 10, it's going to pull me up. I am, and I don't say this to brag, but I am Googleable. And I think it's because my name is unique. It is Darante LaMar. My last name is Martin. Some of you think my last name is Lamar. I can see how you would get there, but no. It's Darante LaMar Martin. But if you type in Darante, if you type in Darante LaMar, if you type in Darante LaMar Martin, if you type in Lamar Martin, if you type it in Amazon, it's going to lead to me. If you type it in Google, it's going to lead to me. If you type it in YouTube, it's going to lead to me. So if you're looking for the book, you can find it on Amazon. You can also find it on Google. I really look forward to hearing your feedback. Please, if you read it, leave me a review on Amazon. Good, bad, ugly. I don't do this work with the expectation that other people are going to agree or praise everything I do. That is not necessarily a need for me. Feedback is a need. And so, yes, I do need feedback. And sometimes that feedback is praise, and sometimes it is not. But I do value all feedback, especially on work such as this. And when I say I value it, that doesn't mean I'll agree with it, but I will value it. And sometimes I value it by responding, poor fella. All right, I'm just playing. I love y'all. Thank y'all for hanging out with me. Please go check out the book. Until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, stay beautiful. I'll holler at you later.